You're listening to 91 Reasons, a journey into the twisted landscape of pop culture. Keep your hands and arms inside the podcast at all times. And now, The Voice, Jeff Tucker.
Well, looky what we have here. Another episode of 91 Reasons. Isn't that strange? They seem to come out almost every week, sometimes twice, which is an accomplishment for a guy as busy as I am, but I have to do this. I find that I have to do this. Yeah, it's Tuesday afternoon, late afternoon. Dinner is cooking, so I'll have to take a break at some point fairly soon to serve dinner to my kids and then finish this episode. But I find that if I sit around and wait for the perfect time and I'm going to have all this time to do it, it never happens, you know. The internet is a black hole that sucks time away, so you have to tell yourself you're going to stop and do something else and do something productive. Because at the end of an hour on the internet, you have nothing. But if I can sit here and talk for an hour, I will have an episode that will, for my purposes, live forever, since I'm compiling these episodes to one day give to my children and say, here's hours and hours of your idiot father talking and talking. So, which will be doubly a blessing for my daughter, who sits and listens to me do it live and then critiques my episodes after the fact. So I hope this is a good episode, Josie. Yeah, she doesn't know what the topic is about, but we'll get into it fairly quickly, because, you know, I'm not a fan of podcasts that tell you they're going to talk about something and then they don't talk about it for 15, 20 minutes. There shouldn't be that much preamble to your show. Just get to it. And in the spirit of just getting to it, I will just get to it now. When will then be now? Soon. All right. So anyways, if you've listened to any of my episodes, and how many of my episodes actually contain that sentence, you'll know that I was a product of the 70s, but I was a child of the 80s, because I came of age in the 80s, and I spent most of the 80s watching movies all day. You know, first it was on TV in cut-up versions, and then it was on TV in cut-up versions with recording them on my Betamax and playing them over and over again, and then being shocked when I rented the same movies and found out there were extra scenes or foul language or nudity that wasn't in the TV version. And the thing that really interested me was simply the extra scenes that could be found. I remember watching American Graffiti over and over on Beta, and then renting it and being surprised at, like, oh, there's different scenes in here. They go to like this car graveyard where all the hot rods have been destroyed because they were racing, and that's not in the TV version. And I guess you can make your own conclusions for a guy who owns a movie at home and then rents it anyways. I mean, what does it say about me? That says I'm crazy, right? It says I'm obsessive about movies. But that's what I was. I was obsessive about movies, to the degree of every episode of Starlog and even Cracked, because Cracked would parody the movies. Not Cracked, Mad. Mad would parody the movies. Cracked to some degree too. And I'm talking about the original Cracked magazine, not the hipster website, which I'm a big fan of. Don't get me wrong. I listen to their podcasts all the time. But I devoured movies. I had the little cassette tapes of movies where you would play it and somebody would narrate the movie with sound effects. I thought that was the coolest thing ever. And that's what we did before videotapes. And then when I finally got old enough to ride a bike to the movies, I went to the movies every free chance that I could. Every weekend during the summer, every day as often as I could, I went to either to see a first run movie at the Lakewood Theater, or I would see cheaper movies at the Alondra Six because they were only $1.50, and I would devour movies as many as I could, and that's the way it was. And it wasn't until, and this is where you're going to laugh at me, but 91 Reasons is honest if it's not anything, right? And I've told some pretty honest tales about my childhood, and why stop there? Why not continue the trend, right? The first music I ever got into, and I'm not counting like the occasional movie soundtrack song, like I really liked For Your Eyes Only because it reminded me of the movie, you know. But the first time I ever got into music just for music's sake was Huey Lewis and the News. Yes, it couldn't get more white bread or white boy than Huey Lewis and the News, right? I remember seeing a video for I Want a New Drug on MTV and just being struck by, that's a really cool song. And I liked the vibe of the band, and everyone I knew had been taken in by some music band or genre, and that's what their obsession was. My sister was into Culture Club and Duran Duran and Madonna and George Michael, you know, Wham, and I didn't get any of that stuff. I spent my time with movies, not music. I was always the guy, as soon as it was feasible, if I was going to do work, even homework, I would put a movie on for comfort in the background. Music did not come around until, what was I Want a New Drug, 83, 84? You know, that's really late to be getting into music. Most kids are into it much earlier, you know. There were kids my age into Van Halen and you name it, you know, a million bands, to Twisted Sister, right? But I got into the Huey Lewis and the News, and, you know, they were safe. The music's very middle of the road, very even, and nothing too shocking, you know. And I even went to a couple of Huey Lewis concerts, and, you know, it's weird going because Steve and I would go to these Huey Lewis concerts. We once went to one at the Pacific Amphitheater, and like we were the youngest people there because everybody at the concert was 30 and we were teenagers. So I was into old music, and not old music like I listened to Frank Sinatra. No, like just older people, not easy listening, but, you know, top 40 music. And it wasn't what was popular in the day. I didn't get into popular music till much later. And even when I got into listening to, like, if you're living at home with a teenage sister, you have no choice but to be, you know, enveloped by pop music at every turn. And she had Missing Persons and Tears for Fears and Till Tuesday all on vinyl, and they would just play over and over and over again, you know, little Michael Jackson here and there. But that was kind of how you know, music was sort of forced on me, like it's just here and you have to deal with it. And MTV is on, and there's a lot of pretty girls on MTV, but you got to suffer through the music to see the pretty girls, right? Not so much suffering with David Lee Roth and California Girls and the girl in the I Want a New Drug video, or If This Is It. But I never really let music define me as a teenager until I was 16. And God, you look at it now, that's so late. My daughter is 9 and she listens to Miley Cyrus and some other bands, you know, whatever we can filter through for her. But it wasn't until 16 that I got into music, and it happened accidentally, and it happened with I was in drama in high school, and we were doing a play called The Fatal French Dentist, which is a terrible play about manners. I think I've mentioned it very briefly before, but I'll talk about that at some. You know, I'll talk about all the plays I've done at some point. I mean, that's interesting, I guess, to me. But, you know, adventures are interesting. But I was doing this play, and there was a girl in the play, and her name was Danielle, and we started dating. It was the first time I'd ever really dated a girl. And again, 16. It was late. A lot of guys had already had girlfriends by then, but I was a drama nerd. I played Dungeons and Dragons. I had a room full of Star Wars toys. These are not attributes that are attractive to the opposite. And if you see, there's a picture of my room from the 80s on the Facebook page. It looks like pop culture vomited in my room. What girl would want to put up with that, But for whatever reason, I started dating this girl, Danielle. Danielle Buckaloo, her name was. And I had known her brother for years, and her brother just hated that I was dating her. And Danielle had a sister, and I don't know what Danielle's sister's real name was, but everybody called her Star. And it wasn't even Star Buckaloo. It was just Star. Like she was like Cher or Madonna. And she was dating an older guy named Damien. And Damien had a car. So if I was dating Danielle and Star was dating Damien, we would double date everywhere. And we would, go out to fast food. And this is a really short time period. I'm not talking a long dating time. It's not long at all. We went to the prom together in my sophomore, junior year. We went to the prom. And I remember we were driving out to the middle of nowhere to look at prom dresses. And any guy that's suffered through this knows, like, this is not fun. Like, this is just hours and hours of not the right dress, not the right dress, not the right dress. But I remember it wasn't even local. Well, like, we had to drive 45 minutes or so to find this silly dress. And in the car on the way up, Damien was playing Depeche Mode. And I knew Depeche Mode because my sister was into it. She was listening to K-Rock long before I was. She was hip before I even knew what hip was. But this song came on, and it was this weird song about a guy telling a girl that if they got hit by a bus, it would be the most romantic thing ever. Like, if they could die together, it would be the most romantic thing ever. And I was just struck by how interesting the lyrics were, because Depeche Mode was, all these dark things. If you look past Depeche Mode's first album, where it's kind of pop and synthetic and synthesizer sort of thing, after that they got really dark, and all their songs were we're dark, right? But this other song, and I thought it was Depeche Mode. I didn't know what it was. But I remember at some point during the car ride, like, saying to Damien, what was that song, that Depeche Mode song you just played? What was that? And he was like, no, that's not Depeche Mode, dude. That's The Smiths. And I was like, The Smiths? I'd never even heard of them. But I liked the song. So I did what every kid in the 80s did. I went to the record store. Now, the record store we had in our area that was anything worth going to, because we had Music Plus and Sam Goody and The Warehouse, and they only carried what was popular, and it was hard to get stuff. And this was an English band, and nobody was playing them, because when I got to the record store, Middle Earth, the fantastic Middle Earth record store in Downey that had imports and bootlegs and stuff you couldn't get anywhere else, they clued me in. They're like, oh yeah, we have that. That's over there. That's the Smiths. And they have a whole discography. And the problem was that by the time I was looking them up, they had already broken up. So seeing them live wasn't an option. But I remember buying the album The Queen is Dead, which was not their first album, but instead was their third album. I remember really liking it. Like, this is really crazy stuff. And the song There's a Light That Never Goes Out is such an anthem for anybody. And I'm talking in circles, and I apologize. But on the surface, There Is a Light That Never Goes Out seems to be a depressing song, because he talks about take me out tonight, where there's music and there's people and they're young and alive, and if a 10-ton truck crashes into us, the privilege, the pleasure is mine. And he's not wanting to die. Morrissey is not wanting to die, but he's saying if it did happen, the pleasure and the privilege of having it happen with you would be the greatest thing ever. So I was struck by how morbidly romantic it was. And it wasn't morbidly romantic in the way The Cure was like, oh, they're The Cure, because I like The Cure. Or I would like them after I got into the Smiths. But the Smiths was the gateway. And Queen is Dead was the key, because I bought it, I took it home, one of the first CDs I ever bought, or maybe it was a cassette. And I just remember being like, this is amazing. This music's fantastic. And it did what great music is supposed to do. It opened up all these emotions and caused me to want to buy all of their albums. If this one's this good, the other ones must be just as good or better. I mean, I gotta hear all these things. And I just really fell into how great the music was. And anybody who listens to the Smiths and Morrissey, you're immediately labeled, oh, you're depressed, you're emo, you're goth. We didn't have emo back then. We had goth, but goth was Bauhaus and, really dark alternative bands. And the Smiths lived in this sort of hazy in-between of they're not popular, and that's why we like them. We wish they would be more popular, but will we like them as much? Oh, they're already broke up. We can't go see them in concert. So it's all depressing and awful, right? And when when Danielle made the cheerleading squad, she broke up with me the same day because I wasn't cool enough to date a cheerleader. I was cool enough to date someone in the drama department, but I wasn't cool enough to date a cheerleader. And they must have made that very clear to her. So she broke up with me. And then the music took on even more importance. Because on The Queen is Dead, and I'm not going in order because I didn't listen to them in order because I was too young when the early ones came out. But The Queen is Dead not only has There Is a Light That Never Goes Out, which is such a strong song, but it has a few other songs that trigger the depression side. I Know It's Over is one of the most depressing songs ever written. And I just remember discovering this song and hearing it, and he sings about, oh, mother, I can feel the soil falling over my head. And you're just, you can spiral into depression faster than anything. And there's a couple of lines in there that really struck with me because he talks about, if you're so funny and clever, how come there's nobody with you? And oh, that became my mantra, man, my slogan. Because I was really popular in the drama circle, but I still couldn't get a date because even the nerdy drama girls dated outside the drama circle. Even they knew what hip and what hip wasn't. So when I finally got in with a group of guys, and you've heard me talk about them before, John was the ringleader, and he lived in the Talk of the Town trailer park. And there were a bunch of guys who either lived in the trailer park or around, or you had gone to school with us. There was John, the ringleader, Dave, the misunderstood, depressed guy who dropped out of school, Joe, who I've talked about, who skipped school but pretended like he was still going to school. There was me. There was Randy Villani, who was a good-looking, jock guy. We could never figure out what Randy was doing with us. But Randy liked comic books, and he couldn't talk comic books with his football guys. So he was stuck with us because only we understood Batman comics, right? And the Punisher and Daredevil and whatever else he read. So we had this other guy, Rich, and poor Rich. Rich was a guy who had an accident at the theme park, at the trailer park pool, and an ashtray on a stand struck him in the head, and he was paralyzed on one side of his body. But he never let that slow him down, and Rich could do things that the rest of us couldn't, and we were always amazed. And there were girls. There was Shelly and Diane and Angie who hung out at the trailer. We lived at the trailer park, right? But we used to drive around Norwalk, the small town we grew up in, and we would listen to this music. Now, John had a classic ranchero with a cassette player, and Joe had that lowered truck that froze in the wintertime because you couldn't roll the windows up because they were too tinted. But we all listened to the Smiths, and we burned through all of their albums over and over and over. And it became literally the soundtrack to our lives. And I had a Sony yellow, all-weather boombox. And one of the cool features is that when the cassette tape ended, it would go the other direction. So you didn't have to rewind. You didn't even have to flip the tape over. It would just play continuously. So we could put these cassettes on continuous while we were hanging out and talking about how no one loved us and we had no future and what we were going to do. And we're hanging out either at my house or at John's trailer or in the talk of the town playground. And looking back, it wasn't fun, but it was all we had. And we went to the movies a lot, and we hung out and played Nintendo. And we listened to this music. And when we burned through them all, we all had our favorites. The Smiths' debut album is really dark. It's almost the darkest of their albums, except maybe Meat is Murder. But the debut album, other than I'm looking at the tracks listings, just so you know. I'm cheating with tracks listings. I'm looking at the debut album. There are not a lot of happy songs. Not that the Smiths were ever known for happy songs, but they did occasionally have what they thought were pop hits, because the English way of doing business in music was you released an album, but you also just released singles again and again, even without an album to support it. And they released a lot of singles, and their songs were very against Margaret Thatcher and the English government. And us American kids just thought that was so alien and different and fun and oh my God, right? But I was struck by a few of the songs on it. And what happened was, in the midst of all this, as we move into the later 80s, I did eventually manage to get a girlfriend. I know, shocker, right? But she was younger than me. And so the guy started turning to the debut album, because there's a song on it called The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, and you can get the reference. So out of all the songs on the first one, that's the one that I heard the most. But there's still, you're not going to find very many bad Smith songs, in my opinion. There are a few that are clunkers, usually the ones that they were covers of somebody else's music. But the Smiths' first album just has, when I listen to it, to me it's 1987 or 88, and we're driving around, and some of us are having fun, and some of us aren't, and we're trying to navigate the teenage years, to survive them, in what I wanted to do was just graduate and get out of high school and start my life and get away from all the people that were tormenting me, because, I've said before, I was president of the drama club. I wrote the senior play that we did, a 3-act monstrosity about guys who run a mortuary. So I was popular among the weirdos, but I wasn't popular in the mainstream popular sense. So I got harassed a lot, and I was eager to get out of high school. I wanted out. I wasn't one of those guys who looked on them as the ultimate golden years, and oh my gosh, when they end, what are we going to do? No, I was ready to get out. That was not the problem. And the Smiths' music just echoed how we were all feeling. And we all had our favorites. And we listened to them all again and again and again. And gosh, there's a lot of memories in there. And we discovered the rest of the albums: Meat is Murder, Strange Ways, Here We Come, Louder Than Bombs. We would put on Louder Than Bombs probably the most, because Louder Than Bombs has the most songs on it. Like, there's a lot of tracks on it. I'm looking at it right now, 24 tracks. And if you take out some of the clunkers, like Golden Lights, the rest of them are pretty good. And there's a lot of classics in there, you know, a lot of songs that we would put on, and that just would be it. You wouldn't have to change the record anymore. We weren't changing records or tapes every song to put something else on. The Smiths were what we listened to, and we the only way to put it is we wallowed in the darkness of it. We wallowed in the depression of it. And Joe was the ringleader of that. If John was the ringleader of the entire group, Joe was the ringleader of We Have No Hope. Everything's depressing, so play that song again. And on the weekends, Joe was one of those guys that would get drunk a lot. Like as drunk as he could get, as fast as he could get, and yell about not touching the radio. Don't touch it. We're putting that song on all night, just that song. And I'd go, really, one song? And it became like a fight till 3 a.m. of just the song playing over and over again. And I'm saying it, and it sounds terrible. But at the time, this was our life, and it was fun, and this was the fabric of how we lived. And we just swore allegiance to the Smiths, which was strange because, again, they were broke up. We weren't going to get to see them. And then in 88, Morrissey released a solo album, Viva Hate. And boy, doesn't that title say it all. Viva Hate. Like, this is a guy wallowing in hate. His band had left him. And I just recently read his autobiography, and he's still angry about how the Smiths broke up and how backstabbing and, you know, backroom politics broke up one of the greatest bands of the 80s. And whether you agree with that or not, that's fine. But for me, they were my band, you know. We listened to every song. And Viva Hate just felt like the next Smiths album. You know, Morrissey was writing the same songs he always did. Marr wasn't doing the music, but the songs were very familiar, very familiar. So when you put the track or the CDs or the albums all together, they just sort of flow in one into the other. And Viva Hate is just an extension of Strange Ways, Here We Come, which was the last Smiths album. Now, Strange Ways, and I know I'm darting all around, but that's okay, because we're not doing linear or anything. We're not doing John Hughes' filmography, right? Because when I look at the Smiths, it's not so much the mechanics of the albums, because you can go anywhere for that, but what I was doing at the time and how it made me feel. And Strange Ways has some good songs on it, but it also has some of there's some clunkers, you know. Paint a vulgar picture about a guy, about a company resurrecting somebody's career after he's died. Like, it's really weird. It has a couple of lines in it. I mean, the line, I touched you at the soundtrack and I begged, take me with you. I don't care where you're going. Like, that's a fantastic message. And I wish this was the kind of podcast where I could insert all these songs in. But I'm terrified that I'm going to put an episode out and get a cease and desist because of music. And that's why there's no music in my episodes, other than, you know, my theme song. And there's one episode I tried something fun on the end closing, but I'm just terrified of getting a cease and desist for using somebody's music. So that's the reason why. So I'll put all these songs on the Facebook page, their videos, or, you know, somebody uploading them with their own pictures or whatever it is, so you can get a flavor of that if you don't know what I'm talking about. And this is all ancient history, so I'm sure there's tons of you who have no idea who these bands even are. And here's this guy rattling on and on and on at nearly the 30-minute mark about a band that broke up nearly 30 years ago. But because I was passionate about it, the songs meant something. And Viva Hate, Strange Ways. Meat is Murder is probably the one I've listened to least. Only because I don't care for the song Meat is Murder. It's a dreary song about veganism. There are some really good songs on Meat is Murder, though. If you look at That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore, like that's a really good song. I'm laughing only because these songs all identify with people. And John was That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore, because there's a line where Morrissey says, girls only like me for my mind. And that's how we equated John. That's really funny. It's weird looking at these songs and finally like putting them in context and what they mean and who they belong to metaphorically in my world, But like I said, I finally got a girlfriend near the end of this time period. And it was really funny in that Morrissey's next album was Kill Uncle in 90. I think he had done Bona Drag, which is a compilation with a couple of... That was the thing he did. He would put out a compilation with all the singles that he'd put out and then like one or two new songs. And I really liked November Spawned a Monster. It was a really powerful, good song. A lot of these songs, you have to listen to 10,000 times to even understand what he's talking about. November Spawned a Monster is about a handicapped girl. Like, it's really bizarre stuff, right? And the videos don't help you out because they don't illustrate the song almost ever. But when he finally came out with Kill Uncle was the first album that had, like, this is just Morrissey. There's no remnants of the Smiths. None of these songs were even hinted at or written for the Smiths era. This is all Morrissey's solo era. And I remember Kill Uncle came out, and my girlfriend was still in school. So I went and I got it at Music Plus at Norwalk Square and took it home and listened to it. And I wasn't impressed. Like, Kill Uncle's not a very good album at all. And when I went over to her house and, hey, here's the new Morrissey album, she was like, what's open? I was like, yeah, I listened to it. You listened to it without me? I was like, I don't think is that a big deal? We're supposed to listen to it together. I was like, oh, I wasn't hip to that. Sorry. So I had to listen to it again. Now, Kill Uncle eventually would grow on me, but it's still like if I never heard it again, I'd be fine with that. It's not a very good album. The only thing that's good about Kill Uncle is that Morrissey came to L.A. and recorded an album just for K-Rock. It was 4 songs just for K-Rock, and he was finally putting together a touring band so he could go on tour and do concerts. And he hired Boz Borer from the Polecats, who was like a rockabilly guy. So when they went to do these 4 songs for K-Rock, they were from Kill Uncle, or mostly from Kill Uncle, but he did them in a rockabilly way. So they had a whole new sound. Now those were good, like really good. And they signaled like a new era for Morrissey. Like he was going to finally come out of his shell and make music for the pop charts, but also maintain music for the people who had loved what he was doing all along, the morose and the dark and dreary songs. I laugh while I say it because I don't listen to music to get depressed anymore. But that would all change for the better with Your Arsenal. And Your Arsenal was the best Morrissey solo album ever. Like, all the songs were designed to be pop hits on the radio, and they got a lot of airplay. Tomorrow got all the way on the tracks, like on the charts, like really high on the pop charts even. Higher than Girlfriend in a Coma, or all the times he had tried deliberately, like Suede Head, to do something that would hit the charts. And it finally happened with Your Arsenal. And I think Your Arsenal was far and away more successful than any album the Smiths had done, anything Morrissey had done until that point. And it signaled like this guy's finally going to have the big career that he wants, that he dreams of. And I don't think even Morrissey was happy ever with his career, even when it hit the high note. You know, because he's always depressed. He's always just a stick in the mud. He can't enjoy his success. He can't enjoy his fame. But I enjoyed what he brought to my life. I really did. And because Your Arsenal was such a success, Morrissey was able to tour. And I can remember getting our first glimpse at what it was like to be at one of those concerts. And it was unusual because, like I've said, the girl I was dating was younger. So her parents wouldn't allow her to go to anything like that. So the first concert, I just went with friends. And I just remember it being amazing, just totally amazing. And I had, crappy seats, but I remember splurging for really good seats at the Forum. And I had, not great seats, but they were much better. They were much closer. And that was the show where, for the finale, David Bowie came out and sang a song with him. And that was just, it was really cool. And somewhere in my boxes of junk, I have an actual audio tape that someone made of that concert that was just like reliving it over and over again. But we got to see Morrissey in action on the stage. And it made him, it's weird, because at once it made him more of a god, because there he is on stage. And at a Morrissey concert, people play this game of can you make it to the stage and hug him. So he's at once a god and once not, because he's real, bigger than life, and then there he is, he's just a man. And we were all just sort of touched by how much emotion there was in the concerts. And I finally was able to take my girlfriend to a concert, and it was at the Poly Pavilion, and it was a fantastic show that ended very quickly because he was in a really good mood that night. And Morrissey, his moods weren't always the greatest, and you can tell by his music. But for the Poly Pavilion show, he was really engaging the audience to come on stage and join him. So people were just making the trek. And finally it got out of hand, so they shut the show down, and they told everybody in the house to fold up their folding chairs and pass them forward. So this took 30 or 40 minutes. And once they had all the chairs off the floor, the show would begin again, because there'd be more room now, or at least that's what they told us. And instead, once the chairs were removed, i.e. the weapons, the show was canceled. And everybody was really upset. And I remember we left and went upstairs to get a T-shirt before everything closed up. And we were standing at a T-shirt booth, and we didn't know that farther down the line, people were already getting out of hand. They were rioting because the concert had been canceled. And all I remember is 1 second I was looking at the T-shirts, and the next second, the entire souvenir booth was picked up and just destroyed right in front of me, like a movie scene. Just there, it's gone. And I was scared. I was like, oh my God, not only am I scared for my own safety, but I finally convinced her parents to let her go, and now she's going to get injured. So we booked it to the car and booked it home. And then got yelled at because we didn't stop and call. Remember, this is way before cell phones. So we didn't stop at a payphone to say we're okay. And my mother had seen somebody on the news who kind of looked like me, covered in blood, at the Morrissey riots. And was it me? And they were convinced we were dead. And I was like, we're fine. I dropped her off. I came home. Everybody's fine. But it did make him real. And The other thing that happened is, like anything in life, especially when you're young, that relationship ended, and it ended rough. It ended where I wasn't ready for it to end, and she was, and I get that, and it just ended. And so Morrissey's music became even more important to me because I clung to it as the glue holding myself together, because I still hadn't decided in life what I wanted to do. And I was working at these retail jobs, mom and pop video store, Blockbuster Video, Spencer Gifts, and I hadn't discovered me yet, the outlet that was going to let me be me. So I was substituting the music for it. I was also doing plays, writing plays and that sort of thing. But, when I got home, I was slowly turning towards the music a lot more than I was the movies. And it was pretty depressing, even though Your Arsenal is not a depressing album. But thankfully, I still had good friends, and they were going to lift me out of my mood. And we started going to this nightclub in Redondo Beach called Fashions on the Redondo Beach Pier. And it was DJ'd every Saturday night by Richard Blade, who was one of the biggest, if not the biggest DJ on K-Rock. So we would go hang out, and we peripherally knew Richard Blade. He was very cordial, but not overly friendly. I mean, he was 500 people at these events every Saturday. And a couple of things happened. The first thing that happened, and I'm going to jump back in time real quick, and I apologize because I'm sort of bouncing around, but we're talking about something that encompassed a huge part of my life. So it's not like I can just do the linear Spencer Gifts tale. I did get close to Morrissey in 91. He did an appearance at K-Rock where he just did an interview. And it was weird to think, like, this guy that lived on the other side of the planet, we knew where he was going to be at a certain time on a certain place. So you can imagine, I camped out overnight at the Burbank K-Rock studios because we knew Morrissey was coming. And we also knew that he was such a big supporter of his fans that he wouldn't just slide in the back door. And we were right, because after hours and hours of waiting and meeting certain people and all these, Morrissey's car pulled up to the front, and that guy walked up the front walk. And I had my video camera, and I have the footage somewhere. I will upload it and get it on the page. But he comes through the crowd, and people are screaming, and they're hugging him, and the handlers are screaming, "Get back!" And for 2 seconds, he's in the frame of my camera, and I remember just being jarred at like getting that close to him because he was just so out of reach. And there he was, and it was such a cool moment. I have the video somewhere, but I'd never met the guy. I wasn't that savvy. But after we had started going to this nightclub, we would listen to Richard's Flashback Lunch on K-Rock. And one day he announced they were going to have Morrissey night at the club. Well, this was great because that's what I went for. And they only played a Morrissey song maybe, once every hour and a half in between New Order and Berlin and all the other songs. But they were going to have Morrissey night, and they were going to have first they were going to have a Morrissey look. At first it was going to be a Morrissey look-alike contest. And I was ready for that because I had my head shaved and my pompadour up and my hearing aid and my horn rim glasses. And then it turned into, instead of doing that, they were going to open it up to everybody, not those of us who were living the Morrissey lifestyle, but everybody who had just a cool Morrissey t-shirt or jacket. Now, I had what I considered to be the greatest Morrissey jacket of all time, and I wore it to the club more than once. And what it was, and I apologize for how terrible this is going to sound, but it is. I had a picture of my ex-girlfriend looking morose and holding a rosary, and I put it on the back of the jacket with the song Pretty Girls Make Graves and then the lyrics. And I wore it to the club. Well, I wore it that night because I knew there was going to be people there with, Morrissey shirts they had gotten at the recently and almost new Hot Topic store at Lakewood Mall. But I knew I had something special. So we get to the club, and it's me and Steve and Laura. And Richard comes out, and he's like, listen, it's Richard Blade. Listen, we just want to tell you Morrissey is here in the club tonight. And we're like, yeah, sure he is. Like, Morrissey's here at Fashions on the Redondo Beach Pier. Give me a break. So the lights went out. And when the lights came back on, I swear to God, Morrissey was standing next to Richard Blade. And there was a collective moment in the club. The air was sucked out of the room. He was really there. We couldn't believe it. I was stunned. Like, my eyes got as big as dinner plates. So the lights go off. They ushered him to a back room because he can't hang out there. And Richard comes on it and explains that they were going to do a Morrissey lookalike contest. And Morrissey was going to enter to see if he could win. Oh my God, could you imagine? But thankfully, saner heads prevailed because they didn't want a scene. They went to the jacket thing. So I'm up there with a bunch of guys in their jackets and their T-shirts. And I was hoping that Richard was going to pick the winner because Richard could tell out of all of them, mine was the most original. And it spoke to what Morrissey was about. Because Morrissey's album covers were always, for the Smiths, random pictures from his youth, and not him, but like celebrities and TV shows and obscure movie stills, and that's where they got the covers from. So my jacket kept up that motif, and instead, just like what happened when I entered the Rocketeer costume contest at the premiere of the Rocketeer, we're going to let the crowd decide. Well, the crowd always picks the dumb ones. I don't know what it is. Maybe the dummies just have the most friends in the audience, but the crowd never picks the one that should win. So, of course, the guy that won was wearing a brown jacket that had Morrissey's name stitched on the back. That's it. Nothing original. It was one trip to the embroidery shop, and there he won. And Richard's like, this guy's going to win 10 or 15 minutes to talk to Morrissey in the back room. And I was like, you son of a bitch. I was crushed, and I can remember watching the guy go to the back, and all we could see of Morrissey was his feet and one of his hands sticking out from behind something, and this guy's just chatting away, and I'm like, I don't believe it. So what happened next was, thankfully, Richard Blade came up to me, and he was sympathetic, and he said, I'm really sorry because your jacket really was the best, and I was like, wow, that means a lot to me. It doesn't get me to see Morrissey, but it means a lot to me, Mr. Blade. Thank you. So what happened over the next, it must have been 2 or 3 months. We would hit that club every Saturday night because I had no social life. The improv group I was in had disbanded, and wait till I do that show, because we had performed at the Comedy Store. But my Saturday nights were suddenly, I had nothing going on, and I needed a social life. I was looking for a girlfriend in the worst way. I was a girlfriend material guy. Like I needed to be somebody's boyfriend, and it just wasn't happening. So what happened was, over the course of going to this club again and again and hanging out with Richard Blade, what I did was I was working at Spencer Gifts, and we got in Vanilla Ice dolls. Vanilla Ice dolls. Well, I took it home. I bought one. I took it home. And with some paint and a new outfit, he became Morrissey. Same look. So I presented Richard Blade with a Morrissey doll, and he thought that was the greatest thing ever. So he became chummy. Like we were very friendly with each other, to the point where I could call in and get request on the radio. He would play my voice on the radio, and it culminated in a really amazing moment. I was working Spencer Gifts, and it was lunchtime, And the phone rang, and I said, hello, Spencer Gifts. This is Jeff. Can I help you? Jeff, it's Richard Blade. Stay by the phone. Stay by the phone. I was like, okay, I'll stay by the phone, Richard. Thanks for calling Spencer Gifts. So I hang it up, and I'm just like, what was that about? Richard Blade called me at Spencer Gifts. That really happened. So I'm standing there praying I don't get a customer because I'm going to have to blow this customer off. And the phone rings, and I go, before I can even get out, hello, this is Spencer Gifts, Richard goes, Jeff, stay on the line. And then it goes on hold. I'm like, okay. And I'm hearing K-Rock. And all of a sudden, Richard comes on the line. You hear the click. And he goes, all right, you caller 20. You're the big winner. And I was like, yeah, K-Rock, I'm the big winner. And I have no idea what I've won. I have no clue. Richard just called me and gave me the prize. He goes, you're on the list to meet Morrissey when he's in town next month. Oh, my God. I lost my mind. I couldn't believe it. So I gave him all the information, again, before cell phones. So it was all done with your home phone and your address and the whole bit. And I was like, I can't believe this is really going to happen. I'm really going to meet this guy. This is my hero. So the time marched on, and I met Richard at Fashions and thanked him profusely. And he was just excited to have done it for somebody he knew was such a big fan. So the day comes, and this almost destroyed my friendship with Steve and Laura, because Steve and Laura were a married couple, and I was a single guy. So I asked another girl to go on the meet and greet with me. I didn't ask Laura. I asked this other chick. This other chick who at this point means nothing in my life. I haven't talked to her in years and years, and I talk to Laura every day. So at the time, I was trying to make what I thought was a good choice for my future, and I picked some girl to go with me, and she didn't. I mean, it wasn't even a thing. And I could have picked Laura to meet him, and I felt terrible for years afterwards. So, Laura, if you're listening, I'm sorry I didn't pick you to meet Morrissey. Thankfully, we've done a million other fun things in the 20-plus years since then, so we don't have to dwell on it, do we? We don't have to dwell on it. Stop shaking your head and threatening to call me on the phone. You don't have to do that. All right, moving on. Okay, I've done my mea culpa. So the day of the meet and greet arrives, and they won't tell us where he's at. Instead, they have us meet at a park up in L.A. where Jed the Fish is there. He's the other K-Rock DJ. And then he hands us where the meet and greet is, because they didn't want it getting out until, the last second, so that you couldn't invite all your friends. And remember, there's no cell phone. So once you're out, you're out. So we get it that it's at the Sam Goody right on Hollywood Boulevard. Like, it's not even at an obscure place. So all of us jumped in our cars, and we raced over there as fast as we could to get to this meet and greet, to get in line. So we get in line, and you have to understand, I am fully decked out in my Morrissey gear, and my hair is pompadoured up. I remember Laura took me shopping to find like the perfect outfit to wear to meet him. And I had on this mesh shirt. Like, I must have looked gay. That's got to be what it was, And there's nothing wrong with that, but I wasn't gay. So looking it was not helping my cause at all. So I'm in line to meet Morrissey, and I've got a Morrissey doll that I've made for him. Because if you give Richard Blade one, you have to give Morrissey, the man himself, a doll of himself, right? You have to. So I'm standing in line with the doll, and there's a news crew there because it's this huge crowd that nobody understands. He's this underground artist. He's not really popular in America yet. Only those cool kids know who he is. So the media was all over this thing, and they didn't interview me, but they put me on the news holding the doll and like smiling into the camera. Now that's important. It'll come into play soon. So we're in line, and I see Howie Klein, and Howie Klein was Howie Klein was Morrissey's he was the man who ran Sire Records, who was putting out all the albums, and he was putting together like a group of fans who would just have a conversation with Morrissey after the meet and greet. Well, the doll was opening all kinds of doors. So I was invited to be part of that. So I was excited, like, I'm going to meet him, then I'm going to hang out and talk to him some more. This is it. So I get in line, and finally, like, the doors open, and it's my turn. And I walked in, and there he was, as big as life, the man I idolized, like the music that spoke to me. And everybody in line had the same thing. Everybody had the music speaking directly to them. So we all shared this thing with this guy, and there he is, and he's just like, he's like a cartoon character almost. Like, it's so surreal that he's right there. And they had him elevated so that you couldn't run around and get a picture or anything. But I remember walking up and saying, Hi, Morrissey. I'm Jeff Tucker. And he's like, well, it's nice to meet you. Hello. And I said, I brought you a doll. And he goes, oh, this is very nice. This is lovely. One of the nicest things I've been given. And I was just like, I'm going to pass out. And he signed my record. And I had taken Every Day Is Like Sunday, because in the video, that's what they're all holding for him to sign. So I want it to be just like in the video. And I've turned my chair just to the left because that record is still on my wall right now. One of my prized possessions, my Morrissey signed record. And like, it was just so crazy to meet him. And then I didn't have to leave. I wasn't ushered out. I was part of that focus group that was going to talk to him. So I remember standing there for a good 20 minutes just watching him meet other fans and just like, I can't believe this happened. Like, this is really cool. And I don't get starstruck. And you've listened to my shows, you know I don't get starstruck. Michael J. Fox and Morrissey were the two that sort of struck me. You know, oh my God, because these are people I idolized. You know, they were bigger than life to me. Marty McFly and Morrissey, all, you know, that's it. And I would have gotten that focus group, except Morrissey was taking too long with each fan. And I can attest to that because he was just looking at the doll and signing my record. Like, it wasn't like they do now, like a machine where they sign it and they throw you out. Sign it, throw you out. This was not like that. So the fire marshal was concerned because the line was growing. And at some point, they decided to just shut the whole thing down. And it got ugly. Like with any Morrissey thing, it got ugly. And I'll never forget being asked to leave the store because they were taking Morrissey out the back way. Now, he hadn't met all the fans. There were still people waiting to meet him. But they took him out the back, and as I was taken out to where the line was, some guy just stood up and he goes, K-Rock lied. Get him. And I was like, okay, we got to go. We got to go. Where's Laura? Where's Steve? We got to go. Let's get out of here. And we booked it out of there because I was not in the mood for another riot. But it was a great moment. And I've had a bunch of great moments along the way. And that's one of them. And if you don't like Morrissey, you probably haven't even gotten this far on the episode. And I knew this would happen, which is why I will very quickly put a mini episode up to sort of balance out how dark and personal this one is, right? But what happened after that was fairly quickly. After that, it was either the next day or a couple days. Like, I want to say it was the next day, but it might have been 2 days. There was a Morrissey fest. They were like, hey, we're riding this thing. His album's doing good. He's in town. Some Greek restaurant in like Montebello decided to hold a Morrissey mini convention. So, of course we went. What else have I got to do? So we went down there. Now, I had a spare doll because I'd made myself one. So I'm standing in line to get in with the doll, and I was talking to probably two younger girls, and I met a woman and her husband, and they were very nice. And the wife remarked that she had seen me on TV at the Morrissey signing, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool. That's great." I mean, they recognized me from TV. You know, I had the pompadour hair and the doll was really what they recognized. But there was more to it. The husband recognized me from the doll, But the wife recognized me even more. And what I mean by that is Laura and Steve became good friends with this couple in a really short amount of time. They exchanged numbers, and they were going to hang out a couple of times, and we're going to go to some clubs. And for my part, like, to me, it wasn't a big deal because I've said it before in one of the other episodes. As a single guy, if you're introduced to a single girl that you find attractive or a married woman that you find attractive, you're just going to tune out the married woman because she's off the market. She's not available. So why are you going to, you can't waste your time, right? And what ended up happening was Laura and Steve were very into the idea that this girl was for me. And we're talking about the wife of the married couple. And we were going out to we drove out to Riverside, to Club Metro, and actually never made it in the door because my friend Steve had a very tiny pocket knife and he got into a fight because they were going to take it from him. So we didn't make it in. And then the car broke down. And I ended up pushing a car. Like, the car broke down in the misty, I want to say it was misty raining. The car broke down right after I got on the freeway. So we ended up pushing that car all the way to the next off-ramp. And I got sick. I think I even vomited. Like, I wasn't at my best. But I made a connection with the wife because the husband was in the other car. And it was really strange. Like, I'd never had a woman really hit on me before. I'd always been the guy that had to ask girls on dates, that had to make the first move. No girl ever came up to me and was like, I think you're great, we should hang out. It never happened, ever. So I was really flattered that this girl seemed to like me. But I was confused because this girl was married. And what was I doing even getting involved in any way, even friends, with a married woman? And my mother was so against anything. She's like, where are you going? I said, well, we're going out to Riverside again to see this couple. My mom's like, Jeff, that's a bad idea. You shouldn't go out there again. And it was a Valentine's Day party, 1993. Valentine's Day party. And it was at a trailer park in Riverside, get thrown by this woman and her husband, the Walshes. And I went out to the party, and I got a letter from this woman that said she had feelings for me. And I was like, well, what does that mean? You're married. You've made your life choice. It didn't even occur to me that you could just decide, well, I don't want to be married anymore, and leave. But guess what she did that night? She said, I don't want to be married anymore, and she left. And she left, like, with us. And I remember being in the car and holding her hand and being like, this is so strange. And what happened next was she came to my house. And I've not talked about where I lived in Buena Park, because, again, that's a whole nother episode. But suffice it to say, there were a lot of people living there. And she slept in my room that night. I made her sleep on the couch, not in my bed, because she was married. And the next morning, oh my God, the house was electric. Jeff had a girl in his room, and everybody needed to know. You know that scene where Snow White wakes up and all the dwarves are at the base of her bed going bing, 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 as their noses peek over? That's what happened in my house. Everybody's nose peeked around, and everybody had a reason to come near my door to find out what was going on in there. You know, and after the fact, I can tell you that Don Berg was like, oh, he's not gay. Good job, Jeffrey. Like, oh my God. And I began a relationship with this woman who had left her husband for me after seeing me on TV. She later confessed that she had remembered me from TV and thought I was very good looking and fun, and turned out I was fun. I can't vouch for the good looking part. And what happened was unexpected. And it's all thanks to this Smiths Morrissey thing that I got into. Because I ended up marrying that woman. A year and a half later, she was my wife. And my daughter is sitting here listening to me. Did you not know that story, sweetheart? Did you not know that Mom was married when she met me?
No.
Can you believe it?
No.
It's enough to get you to stop playing Little Big Planet, right?
Yes.
Unbelievable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you have any idea where I was going with that story?
No.
Okay. So yeah. My love affair with my wife began because of Morrissey, because of TV, because of the news, because she had the guts to walk away from a marriage she wasn't into. And she came, and after a brief, silly period of shacking up with Laura and Steve or Tiffany across the way, ended up just sort of moving in with me. And it was weird because after working so hard at that prior relationship and really wanting to make it work and then watching it crumble, it was so satisfying to find that real love and real relationships are, in the beginning and for the most part, effortless. You don't have to try to make somebody love you. They will love you if they will. And if they don't, nothing you can do will make them. And falling in love with Rachel was so easy. And those early months, like we immersed ourselves in this man's music because this is what had brought us together. And I made her a doll, of course. And it's weird to think. And like if you start a journey, like when I start writing a novel, it starts with just a few words. And eventually it's 500 pages. And the journey is so amazing. And I didn't know that riding in a car with Danielle Buckaloo and her sister and her sister's boyfriend and hearing this crazy song was eventually going to be the reason that I'd have a family. Think about that. Think about those kinds of connections. And that my 3 kids, they wouldn't be here today if I hadn't gotten into that music. Because if I wasn't at that signing with that doll to get the TV camera's attention, I wouldn't be where I am today. And whether you like Morrissey or not, or the Smiths or not, and you probably don't, because they're an acquired taste, the journey that they allowed me, I'm eternally grateful for. Morrissey stumbled in the 90s. The albums weren't very good. I have a vivid memory of Richard Blade debuting Boy Racer, and after the song concluded, him saying, Boy Racer, Morrissey, not liking that one. And I was like, yeah, not liking that one either. Southpaw grammar. They're just not very good. And it wasn't until, You Are the Quarry, which was about 8 or 9 years ago, that he finally regained his footing and put out some music that was really good. Of course, good luck seeing him in concert. He's canceled almost every concert in the last 10 years. We just found out recently that he has some form of cancer, which is terrible, because I can't imagine turning on the news and finding out that Morrissey has died. I won't know what to do with myself. You know, the man means that much to me. I owe him my family. I mean, isn't that weird to think? And I'm sure there were a lot of people who are like, yeah, I went to a Van Halen concert and met a girl and found out I was a father. Well, that's fine. I still put the songs on. I like to listen to them. I like that every song is a time capsule, and each song unfolds with its own memories of the past and memories that are great, and some that are bittersweet. And I wish I could meet him again. And I could tell him what he means and what he's done for my life and how grateful I am for that. I apologize if this episode was not up your alley, but I knew I was heading towards a really cool ending. And my 3 kids and my wife are a pretty good ending, even though they're not an ending to me. But I've always had a great time relating my life to Morrissey's lyrics. And in a really cool postscript, there's a magazine that came out right after Morrissey's appearance, and my doll is in the picture with Morrissey in a magazine. So I was able to purchase that, and it's an English magazine, one of those kind that, remember at Tower Records, the magazines from England were like $12. I was like, oh my God, I have to have it. I have to have 2. So if I can find the scan of that, I will throw that up too, so you can take a look at it. And I'll come back soon with a mini episode with something I've picked up at the swap meet, because those are great stories. And more movies to come, more movie reviews, a lot to come on 91 Reasons. Sorry for this descent into my very personal past and views. Hope it wasn't too boring. Everybody's got their own thing, and I went from Huey Lewis to Morrissey. And now I listen to Train a lot. So I went from white guy band to English pop star to white guy band. So I'm not that far from where I started, right? But thanks for listening, as always. I am Jeff Tucker. I am the voice you hear. If you want to support the show, please tell your friends to subscribe. Tell your friends all about 91 Reasons. Leave us a review on iTunes. We love reviews on iTunes. If you want to support us in other ways, you can purchase my books. They're available on Amazon.com. The Sixth Key, The Lost Station, and The Infinite Backward, all available in paperback or as a Kindle download for 99 cents. If you're a Prime member, the download to read it is free. It doesn't get any better than that. And I think I still make like 12 cents. So it's not entirely free for me. I actually get like a few cents. But I'm hard at work on The Ice Temple. It'll be out next year sometime. I just listened to the season pass, their Halloween episode. Fantastic. Congratulations, Doug Barnes, Robert Coker, and all the gang at the season pass for Mike Merriman. A great episode. I'm so happy you were able to finally get that Elvira interview. And I'm already taking heat for some of the stuff I've said, which is great. So if you want to know what I'm talking about, the season pass is available on iTunes. Check out their newest episode all about Halloween Haunt. It's 2 hours plus. There's an interview with my daughter as Maggie. Tons of interviews with haunt creators and me. It's fantastic. You'll love it. And because I know what you need is more of me and my daughter in your life. So why not download, shall we? All right, I got to wrap this up because I got to go pick up my wife at the mall where she works at Build-A-Bear, stuffing bears in a machine, and I'm talking about the whole Build-A-Bear apparatus of people who buy unstuffed animals and have them stuffed in the store. I have no concept why this is a thing. There are a lot of things I don't understand. Like I don't really get football, but I really don't get an unstuffed animal that you then stuff in the store. I don't understand. So I'm going to go pick her up. I'm going to give my voice a rest because I'm about to die after this marathon episode that was supposed to be shorter than all the others and will end up being very, very long and intense. And I'm sorry that I'm rambling at the end. But don't I always ramble at the end? Don't I always have trouble just looking into the mic and saying, this is 91 Reasons?
Thanks for listening to 91 Reasons. Please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes. Find us on Facebook. Is anyone even still listening?